Yo, what's going on? Mike from Mike Talk Sports. After the Washington Commanders lost in embarrassing fashion 40-20 up against the winless Chicago Bears on Thursday Night Football, all the Commanders fans are calling for Ron Rivera's job. So in today's video, we're going to be analyzing Ron Rivera as a head coach in order to determine should Ron Rivera be fired. Ron Rivera has been a former defensive coordinator in the NFL, so he is a defensively minded head coach, and ever since taking over the Commanders in 2020, he's actually had somewhat of a respectable defense. They ranked 4th in points allowed in 2020, 25th in 2021, definitely a down year for Ron Rivera, 7th last year in 2022, but this year it's been absolutely atrocious. In 5 games, Ron Rivera and his defense has allowed 32 points per game, meanwhile scoring 22 points per game on offense, which honestly is pretty impressive for Eric Bieniemy doing under Sam Howell, a 5th round pick. This brings us to one of the main issues with Ron Rivera. He has nothing to do with the offense, and at the end of the day, it is an offensive football league. So whenever your head coach has nothing to do with the offense, the upside of your football team is going to be significantly capped, not only in a singular season, but for the long-term health of the organization. Since 2020, his offenses have ranked 25th in points for, 24th, and 24th in 2022 as well. Absolutely not cutting it on the offensive side. And despite being a head coach for 12 full seasons, Ron Rivera only has 3 winning records under his belt. And of course, Washington Commanders fans don't even care about these winning seasons as they all came with the Panthers. His best record with the Commanders is 8-1, and overall he is 3-5 in his career in playoff games with an 0-1 record with Washington. Something that is really going against Ron Rivera and his whole situation with the Washington Commanders is the fact that the new ownership group has never hired a head coach, so they're going to want to hire their head coach in there to start off this new regime and really erase any traces of their old owner. Whenever you have a head coach that really does not have a significant effect on the X's and O's of a football team and is more of that CEO overseer of the project, not only that, but he's going to instill a good culture into the organization, you expect that factor of him, that culture side of Ron Rivera, to be at an A+ level. But of course, with Ron Rivera, that absolutely has not been the case. Let me read you off some of my complaints in his short time with Washington that I've had with Ron Rivera in terms of the player personnel side of things, the media side of things, and overall the culture setting side of things. Now, before I do, I will acknowledge and give Ron Rivera some credit of coming into a dysfunctional organization and really steering the ship clear of some of the controversies that did go on with their old owner. So in that aspect, I do think Ron Rivera does deserve some credit. Ron Rivera did not back his offensive coordinator, Eric Bieniemy, this offseason. The Kansas City Chiefs and Eric Bieniemy and company for years were notorious for running the toughest training camp in the entire National Football League, but that is a part of the reason why they are such a consistent organization full of winners. And if you're Ron Rivera and you hear a bunch of players complaining about Eric Bieniemy's coaching style, that would suggest to you that those players do not have that inherent drive in order to be a championship caliber football player, but instead Ron Rivera's instinct and his overall thought process was to defend the players and not defend his new offensive coordinator, which in my opinion was a poor move, and he somewhat did apologize in the media for this, which is a very common pattern for Ron Rivera. He always does something wrong and then he apologizes for it later, but the thing that makes the apology insincere is that he never learns from his mistakes. Now let's touch upon the Carson Wentz situation. It was absolutely immature and outright laughable and very tone deaf to blame Carson Wentz for the Washington Commanders' struggles. First and foremost, he was asked why this football team is not doing good, and he basically flat out said, because of the quarterback, because of our quarterback situation. The fact that he said this in the midst of a Dallas Cowboys win streak, an incredible streak of play with Cooper Rush under quarterback, shows how tone deaf Ron Rivera is. The fact that he really thought the difference between the Washington Commanders and a team that at the time was doing very good in their division and the Dallas Cowboys. So the fact that he scapegoated his quarterback for the sole reason that they weren't on the same level as a Dallas Cowboys, when in reality the Dallas Cowboys were winning football games with Cooper Rush. Again, Ron Rivera absolutely just does not get it, and this is something again he apologized for. There has been multiple games where he blames individual players for blown coverages instead of the scheme and over the coaching. A great example of this is the Lions game last year. You can look up some of his statements he made to the media, absolutely throwing players under the bus instead of taking accountability. And to go back on the Carson Wentz situation real quick, what made this situation all the more funny is that after blaming Carson Wentz for their struggles, they turned to Taylor Heineke, and in a key game late in the season up against the Browns, he benches Taylor Heineke for Carson Wentz. So basically the reason he's losing is now going to be a guy he's looking for to add a spark to the team. And this of course backfired, as everyone could have expected it to, as they only scored 10 points in this football game. I also really do not like the way he handled the Dwayne Haskins situation. He thrusted him into a starting situation he clearly was not ready for. Then he benched him after 4 games, having no faith in Dwayne Haskins. And then at the end of the season, again, he admitted he was wrong in what he did and how he handled the Dwayne Haskins situation. Again, it is a common theme with Ron Rivera to admit his mistake, but then not look himself in the mirror and realize he was the reason he made that mistake, and he never fixes these mistakes. Overall, Ron Rivera is a football legend. Of course, he was a legendary player with the Bears, and he had some absolutely legendary seasons as the head coach of the Panthers. But of course, the NFL is what you have done for me recently league. That is what it is all about. And realistically, Ron Rivera has not been helping out the Washington Commanders over the past few seasons. So to answer the question of the video, should Ron Rivera get fired? I don't think he should get fired right now. They are only 2-3 and they are still in the playoff hunt. Obviously, it's still very early on in the season, and they did just play a very close game up against the Philadelphia Eagles. But if the season continues like this and the defense continues to really struggle and really show a lack of effort and heart out there like they did tonight, I do think Ron Rivera needs to get fired, mainly because of Eric Bieniemy. I think you need to get a look at Eric Bieniemy as your interim head coach. You need to see for your future, is Eric Bieniemy the answer at head coach? And you cannot answer this question unless he has a couple of games of being the interim coach, because for Washington, you need to find that new X's and O's brilliant offensive mind, and that could potentially be Eric Bieniemy, and you need this season to answer that question. Thanks for watching today's episode of Mike Talk Sports. Let me know in the comment section below, do you agree with my take that Ron Rivera shouldn't get fired at the moment, but he should later on in the season if the season continues, and they need to get a look at Eric Bieniemy. If you enjoyed today's video, I really appreciate it. Smack that like and hit subscribe. Also, let's go DJ Moore. Easily have him in all my fantasy leagues. He absolutely went off.